Hello YouTube, welcome to another Flutter tutorial. And I know it's been a while, I've had some issues and some other stuff to take care of, but hey, we're back. So let's not delay, let's just get into it. So today we are actually going to talk about one of the most popular and common Flutter widgets, and you guessed it, the container widget. Okay, this widget is so versatile that you would probably use it for almost everything. Okay, and we are going to pick up from where we left off, and actually I'm going to get rid of all of this, and this might be the last time I do this from scratch. Okay, but just for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to get rid of everything here, just leaving the import package. Then what we are going to do is start from the start. So we know that before we can run our app, remember what I said at the beginning, everything starts from what? The main method. Okay, so when we call this main method, we open up our brackets, right? So we call run app, and run app is going to expect some kind of app to run. Okay, so over here, we don't have this app yet, but we would be creating it in a minute. So I'm going to call this the container app. And then just like that, and then make sure to close this with a semicolon. We do not have this app yet, so it is going to complain. So the next thing I am going to do is I'm going to go below the main method, and then we are going to do this by extending a stateless widget. So I'm going to say class, and then remember the name of our app here, the app we want to run. So I'll just copy the name and then paste that in, and then we are going to say this extends a stateless widget. So if I can find stateless widget right here, tab to insert that, and then I'm going to open up our bracket. Now inside here you can see error lens is telling us that we are missing some concrete implementation of the stateless widget. Okay, so we are supposed to implement that, and that basically is the build method. And the way we are going to do this is we are going to override it. So we are going to use the @ symbol, and then we are going to override. So if I can spell override, and then we would come below that, not that, don't do that to me. So I'm going to hit enter to come below, and then we are going to say we want a widget, and this widget is a type. Okay, it's a type of the build method, so we're going to call this build, and it's trying to do that for me because of the extensions, but I want us to do this from scratch at least just once. So I'm going to call this build as it is supposed to be called. Then inside here it takes a context, specifically a build, so the type context, and we usually call this context, and then we get out of that, and then we open our curly braces, and then inside here we need to return something. Okay, so this is where we usually return, oops, I mistakenly pressed my caps lock. We return what? The material app. Okay, so we return our material app, and then let's close that. So this is usually the main structure you would go with for the most part. And I know all of this could be done with just the snippets that we used. Okay, and then so to actually demonstrate that, I'm going to get rid of this, and then to make use of our snippets, all we have to say is STL for stateless, and then tab insert that, and you notice how it gives us everything. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to take this off since we don't have to get into this yet. Now, in this space, this is where we can basically just type in the name of this app we want to run. So I hope I still have that in the clipboard, so I'll paste, and then there we go, we are back in here. The only thing I'm going to change here is this. I'm going to make this a material app. Okay, just like that. Let me get rid of these. And then we saw that the material app, what we can do is we have to call in the home parameter, and then we scaffold our app. So just like this. Now I'm going to save at this point, and my app doesn't want to update. Reason mainly because we did a lot of things. So first things first, because I'm feeling lazy to restart this from beginning, I'm going to actually try to hot restart this to see whether it picks it. Nothing. So I'm going to hot reload it to see whether it picks it up. So hopefully it picks that up. Okay, right, it does that. So as you can see, we have a blank scaffold. There's nothing there, and remember the scaffold will always take everything on the screen. Okay, so the next thing we can do here is, now if you do not like this banner, the debug, okay, you can take it off by going to your material app. Inside the material app, we would look for debug show checked mode banner. Okay, that banner is just there to signify that whatever you're doing isn't the real version of the app. So whatever lagginess you're experiencing within your app doesn't necessarily mean it will transfer to the final release. Okay, so this is just more like a testing playground for whatever you're building. And this is a boolean, so this takes either a true or a false. So right now the default is true, meaning that it should show. So we want to say false. We don't want this to show. And if we save this, you would notice that it disappears. And now we have nothing disturbing us. Now, if we check the Flutter Docks, so if you open up flutter.dev/docs, or you could just open up flutter.dev and then click on docs. If we get to the widget catalog, and then in this widget catalog, so that just loaded. In this widget catalog, if we move down to layout, okay, so most of the time a lot of people are here for Flutter because of how easy it makes layout. So you can see this is broken into 3 categories. So single chart layouts, multi-chart layouts, and then we have sliver widgets. So these are the single chart layouts, and you have align, aspect ratio, and a whole lot. Now what we are interested in here is the container widget. And if we open up this widget, we can see, okay, you can go ahead and watch the Flutter widget of the week, really helpful. But we can see that there's a whole lot of things that the container widget can do. Okay, if you are into web development or you've done a little bit of that, this is similar to a div. Okay, so you can imagine the power of that. So let's go ahead and then try to see what we can do with a container. So if I type in here, so the body of this is going to be a container. So not a container app, but just a container, just like this. And if I can show our emulator, if I save this, you notice we don't see anything different. The reason is that a container would always size itself to as big as possible if it has no child. Okay, it will try to take up everything also. And we can check this out by going to a scaffold, and we can set the background color to say something like colors.amber. Don't know what is it with me and amber. And when we save this, you can see everything looks amber, right? Now we can go back to our container and then provide a color property, and let's say colors.pink, and then let's save this. Now you notice how the pink takes up everything. So when your container has no child, it's going to try up to fill up the entire space if it can. That is just the default behavior. If you read up the documentation, they actually mention it somewhere. It's a little bit hard for me to find it, but then if you go through this documentation, you would find it. I'm just checking to see if I could, but I'm sure it is somewhere here. So coming back here, okay, how useful is this? Now we are not going to go through all the detailed properties of a container because there are a lot, and within the process of this course, you would get to see other things a container can do. But for now, we're going to look at some of the basic things that a container can do for us. Alright, so let's go ahead and give our container a child. So we're going to give this child, and we're going to make this a text, and let's say you are awesome. Okay, so let me go ahead and save this, and you'd notice, if you can see it right in there, okay, that the container now has shrunk to what? The size of its child. That is the behavior of the container. If it has no child, it's going to be as big as possible, and if it has a child, then it's going to try and be as big as the child, and in this case, that. Okay, so you could see that our container together with this child is way at the top corner. Okay, the way you can prevent things from going into the notification bar, and if you're using iOS, you have that thing, that bar over there, and I think Android phones too have that now. The way you can prevent these things from happening is in your body, we can wrap this container, so control period, and then we can wrap this with a widget called a safe area. So just like that, a safe area, so let me save this. A safe area is going to make sure everything you're doing within it is going to be in the safe area. So anything that doesn't go beyond, okay, so let's say this is just our safe area, right? So it doesn't go above all of that. Okay, so now I believe we can keep moving on. So back in our container can take a height, and if you don't know what type of height this is, okay, you can see this is a double. Doesn't really matter even if you provide an integer. So let me cook up a height. Let's say this is 100, so I could say 100.0 to make this a double, or just 100, it would still work. And then we can give this a width, and then let's make it a square, so let's say 100.0. and then when we save this, you can see how this expands. You know what, let me make this actually probably 300, and then let's save this. That looks too big. Okay, I overshot that. I'm going to have to tinker around till I'm satisfied. So kind of too big. This is the last one. If whatever it is, we'll take it. So 150. Yeah, I think that's better. So you can see how we have our text inside there, and then our container, we are now giving our container a specific width and height. So it's no more going to do a shrink to the size of its child. It's going to obey these, should I say, constraints we have given it. Okay, what other interesting things can we do? Now the container can take what we call a margin. All right, so it can take a margin, and for the most part, if you do not know what kind of parameter to pass in here, for example, you can always place your pointer on, let's say, whatever the property is, and you can see here it says edge insert geometry. So this gives you an idea of what the type is going to be. Okay, so we are going to, it's going to take something called exactly that, edge insert, but not the geometry. So edge inserts, and then when we use the dot operator, we get to see quite a number of options here, and they are quite useful depending on what you want to do. So for example, if I press in tab, I'm supposed to provide a value. Okay, and you can see it's also a double, and by default it usually uses an 8.0. So what we can do here is, I'm going to say, let's say 10, and then let's save this. Now if you don't know what margin is, okay, it's usually the space outside of the bounding body. Okay, so this is our text. Okay, this is our container, so the distance between our container and then the rest of the body. So if we had another object here, so the space between this container and the next container is going to be the margin. Okay, something like that. Now we can tinker with some of these options. So what we've done so far, I forgot to explain that, is we are simply saying that we want a margin of 10 from the top. So come down 10, move from the left 10. So there's also 10 here and there's also 10 here. If we had other things close to it, then they'll have that 10 margin around it. If we go back in here and sort of tinker around the others, we could also provide an option that is here, that is from left, top, right, and bottom. So from the left, I could say I want 30, okay? And then I'll tab, and from the top, let's say I want something like maybe just 10. And then from the right, it doesn't really matter because there isn't really anything that would show you. So, but let's say 30 still. And then from the bottom, the same thing, let's say 40. Now, if I save this, you could see it shifted to the right a bit. That's because of this. We said from the left, we want a margin of 30. Okay, you can't really see the rest because we do not have any other widget interacting with this or any other object interacting with this. Right. So let's look at a few more. So now we have, now I haven't used this ever. Okay, these two I haven't used them. These are the common ones. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so only allows you to specify specific target. So for example, I can say I want a margin for only the left side. Okay, I want a margin for only the left side. And then if you place your pointer here, you can see it expects a double. So I can say maybe 50. And if I save this, it is just going to apply the 50 to the left side, and that is it. I could also say I want one for, let's say, the right, just like that. And I can specify that if there's anything interacting, then it should have a margin of 20. Okay. You could go ahead for the rest, so you can say top, and then say from the top, let's say 100. And then that is it. Now you might be asking, so what is the use of this? So let me make this a little bit bigger. What is the use of this compared to from left, top, right, and bottom? Now when you use from left, right, top, and bottom, you are supposed to give at least some values, even if it's 0. But I can see here how I can specify just left, right, and top. I don't have to put in bottom there to give it 0 or anything. I can just end there. I could have specified just one. So that is a use case for this. All right. And then yeah, we can look at the last one on the list, and that is symmetric. So what symmetric allows you to do is you can only specify margins vertically and horizontally. Okay, so a vertical margin and a horizontal margin. So basically we would say vertically we want let's make this, let's say 150 so that we can see it very clearly. And then let's say horizontally, so from the left we can say let's make this, let's say 90, and then let's save this. And you can see vertically we get 150, and then horizontally we get 90. Okay, that's the idea over there. Now probably the last probably I'm going to look at is going to be padding. Okay, very useful. So within the container, if we say padding, all right, this also takes edge inserts geometry. So basically the same thing. So we're going to say edge inserts, and then in here, if we go through and then say all, and then let's enter something like, say my text is a bit long, so let's see if this will work, and save this. All right, that wraps. Now if you don't know what the difference between margin and padding is, let me actually try to see if I can do this. So let me open up Microsoft Whiteboard. So basically, let's say you have pardon my terrible drawing here, let's say you have a bounding box, okay, like this. So let's say this is our screen, okay, and then we have our container. So you know what, let me actually give this a different color so that we can better see this. So we have our container in here, and then we have our text. So let's say this is our text. Now the space, some nice great pens there. So the space between our container and then the bounding object, so let's say this is our screen, okay, is our margin. So this area, the area around our container, is our margin. So if we had, say, another container, then we specify that we want a margin of 20 all around, then it's going to make sure that there's a spacing of what, 20. So excuse me, let me make this a little bit better. So let me get some space in here, and let me get that also, and let's say it. So each time we say all, we are just simply saying give us some space. So from this side of, let's say we said 20 to that side, and then the same thing, so 20, so there 20, like so, and then 20 to this next object. Okay, that is how margin works. Now if we talk about padding is the space, okay, between the child, so this text, so the space between the child and the container. Okay, so this space here, probably should have used something else. So you know what, let me quickly change that. So yeah, let's get this again. So the space in here is our pattern. So initially we had our text just like that, and then let's say we had our container so close to it. Now if you wanted some breathing room for this text, then we do what? We apply padding. So what padding does is just gives us some breathing room. So depending on the size of your padding, we would have our text again, but this time we're going to have some space between what, the text and the container. That's padding. So try to remember that, and then I think you would be okay. So just remember that the spacing between, let's say, the screen and then your container, so this area right here, so this entire area is specified, this is your margin. Okay, hope I spelled that right. And then the space between the child and then the container, okay, so this red part here, and then the child, and this is our container, this side is going to be your pattern. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so once you have this in mind, so like I said, just like web development, once you have this in mind, it's just the same principle. So whatever we are applying in the pattern is just giving us some breathing room. So you can see we are simply saying that we want some pattern 20 20 20 20. That's just all we're doing. Sorry. And we can do this using all the others. So let's just try one more. So let's say symmetric, and we can say horizontally we want, let's say, maybe 30, and then let's say vertically we want let's say 50. Now I hope I don't mess this up since our container isn't that big. So let's save this, and you notice how that moves. So 30 horizontally and then 50 vertically. Okay, so you just end up giving your text some breathing room. All right, so I hope you got this. In the next tutorial we'll be looking at the next set of layout widgets that are multi-child and very commonly used, our row and widget. So guys, this is the end of this tutorial, and this has been Happy Cat. If you like this, leave a like, share and subscribe. I'll see you in the next tutorial.